The salvage ship drifted slowly toward the silent station. It had been floating near a dead star for who knew how many years. No lights, no signals. No life signs, at least. That's what the scanner said. Inside the cockpit, Daniel adjusted his helmet and checked his oxygen. "This place is a graveyard," he muttered to himself. But graveyards sometimes held treasures, and treasures meant credits. He docked at one of the few working airlocks. The doors groaned as they opened, releasing a stale, icy breath from the station's long-dead corridors. His boots echoed in the emptiness as he stepped inside. Frost clung to the walls, and his breath came out in white clouds. The deeper he went, the colder it became. It felt less like walking into a derelict station and more like stepping into a tomb. Most of the rooms were stripped bare. Nothing but broken panels and rusted equipment. But then he found a sealed chamber at the very end of the lowest deck. The door was old, reinforced with thick metal. On the front was a warning in faded alien letters. His helmet translator whispered, "Do not open high risk." Daniel hesitated. He had seen plenty of strange warnings in old wrecks, but this one, it felt different. The air was colder here, biting into his skin even through the suit. He wiped frost off the small window in the door. At first, it looked like just another empty room. Then his light caught the shape of a large pod in the center. It was covered in ice, the glass so fogged he could barely see inside. But as he moved closer, his heart skipped. There was a figure inside. A girl, alien, but unmistakably beautiful, with strange silver lines running along her skin. Her eyes were closed, her body perfectly still. She looked alive, not like a corpse. And then he noticed it, the smallest flicker on the pod's display. Heartbeat detected. He stepped back, unsure. This was no ordinary salvage find. Who would leave someone here for thousands of years? Why freeze them and abandon them in the dark? The pod's control panel blinked weakly. Half the buttons were dead. The only thing still running was the life support. A small speaker crackled, and Daniel froze. Through the static, he heard something soft, broken but real. It was a voice, and it said his name. His blood ran cold. He had never been here before, never met her. How could she know him? He leaned closer. Her lips moved slightly behind the glass. The sound came again, stronger this time. It wasn't just noise, it was a plea. The station's power suddenly surged, lights flickering on and off, somewhere deep in the walls. Heavy machinery hummed to life. Daniel knew that sound security systems waking up. The pod screen flashed red. Cryo lockdown engaged. Then another warning scrolled across. Subject 417 must not be released. His instincts screamed at him to leave, but he couldn't pull his eyes away from her. She looked fragile. Like one wrong breath might shatter her, and yet something about her felt dangerous, ancient, as if the universe itself had put her here for a reason. The control panel had an override key half buried under ice. His gloves shook as he reached for it. "What the hell am I doing?" he whispered. The moment his fingers touched the switch, an alarm blared through the corridor. Red lights spun above his head. A metallic voice echoed through the station. "Warning. Cryo containment breach. Security response active." Daniel's heart pounded. This wasn't salvage anymore. This was trouble. The kind that didn't just end with credits or fines. But then he saw her face again, frost melting around her cheeks. Her eyes opened, not fully, just a sliver, and for a moment he saw them glow faintly, not with fear, but with recognition. He pressed the override. The cryo chamber hissed as steam poured out. Glass cracked and split. The air grew thick with a strange metallic scent. Her body trembled as if waking from a dream too long. Her eyes opened fully, now locking onto his, and even though he didn't understand her words, he felt the urgency in them. She was alive, and she was looking straight at him as if she had been waiting. Behind him, the sound of metal claws scraping against the floor grew louder. The station was not empty anymore. Something was coming for them both. Asterisk steamrolled across the cold floor, curling around Daniel's boots as the cryopod finished unlocking. The hiss of escaping gas echoing through the chamber like a slow exhale after centuries of silence. The alien girl's fingers twitched, and her lips parted as if she had been drowning in some deep, endless dream. Daniel's heart hammered, every instinct screaming at him to run. But he couldn't move. Her eyes opened fully now, glowing faintly like twin shards of a distant star. They studied him in a way that made him feel like she already knew him. Not just his face, but his entire soul. She tried to speak, her voice hoarse and strange, the words slipping past his translator in garbled sounds. She coughed, then whispered something softer, and though he still couldn't understand, the tone was urgent, almost desperate. From somewhere above, a metallic bang shook the deck, dust drifting down from the ceiling. Daniel glanced back at the doorway, his chest tightening. The sound of heavy, clawed feet was getting closer. The station's security drones were coming online, old but still deadly. He reached into the pod and gently pulled her up. She was lighter than he expected, almost too light, her skin icy under his gloves. She shivered violently, her legs unsteady. For a moment, she leaned into him, her hand gripping his suit as if afraid he might disappear. Another metallic slam echoed, this time closer. Daniel's visor flashed with a red proximity warning. He didn't have time to think. He hooked one arm around her and half-dragged, half-carried her toward the exit. The cryochamber door groaned as it slid open, and the corridor beyond flickered. With failing lights, the girl looked around, her gaze sharp now, scanning every shadow. She pointed down the left passage, her voice urgent. Daniel followed without question, his boots thudding against the frozen floor. The air was growing warmer the farther they moved from the cryochamber, but the sense of danger only thickened. A deep, mechanical growl filled the corridor, the sound vibrating through the walls. Daniel risked a glance back, his stomach sinking. A hulking drone emerged from the shadows, its insect-like body glinting with frost. Multiple glowing eyes locking onto them, weapons unfolding from its sides. He pulled the girl behind a broken wall panel, just as a beam of searing light cut through. Where they had been standing, the heat from it stung his face even through the helmet. She pressed against him, her breath quick and uneven. Daniel scanned the passage for an escape, his visor map flickering with static. The drone's metal legs clanged on the floor as it advanced. There was no way they could outrun it in the open. He looked at the wall beside them, a maintenance hatch hung loose on rusted hinges. He shoved it open and guided her inside. The crawl space was narrow and dark, cables dangling like vines. The smell of burnt metal and stale air clung to it. She crawled ahead without hesitation, moving faster than he expected for someone who had just woken from thousands of years of sleep. The drone's beam cut into the wall behind them, sparks spraying like a shower of dying stars. Daniel urged her forward, his own shoulders scraping against the sides. The air was growing hotter, somewhere nearby. Ancient power conduits were still alive, humming faintly. They emerged into a small storage room, the walls stacked with crates covered in alien symbols. The girl stumbled, but caught herself, her eyes darting to the ceiling, where faint vibrations trembled through the panels. She spoke again, slower this time, as if trying to find words he might understand. Daniel's translator picked up fragments. Danger. Hunters. Escape. The way. She said hunters sent a chill through him. It didn't sound like she meant drones. It sounded like she meant living things. Things that wanted her alive. The station shuddered, the lights flickering as a deep thud echoed through the metal frame. Daniel realized it was docking clamps. Something was attaching to the station. Not salvage crews, not rescue teams, something else. She stepped toward the far wall and began running her hands over the panels, her fingers tracing symbols like she remembered them from another lifetime. A hidden door hissed open, revealing a narrow stairwell plunging into darkness. Daniel hesitated, his mind racing. Going deeper into the station meant more danger, but whatever had just docked was waiting in the halls above. The girl looked at him, her expression fierce, and for a moment, it was like she was giving him an order, not a request. They descended quickly, their footsteps echoing in the hollow stairwell. The temperature dropped again, the air sharper, older. The walls here were different, smoother, darker, carved with faint patterns that pulsed with dim light as they passed. Daniel's suit sensors flickered with readings he didn't understand, strange energy signatures curling around them. The girl touched one of the glowing symbols, and for a split second, he saw a flash in his mind. A burning sky, towering spires collapsing. Her standing in the middle of it all, with something glowing in her hands. The vision vanished as fast as it came, leaving him breathless. She kept moving. But now he noticed the way she glanced over her shoulder every few steps, listening, measuring. They weren't alone down here. From somewhere ahead, a low rumble echoed like a giant engine waking after centuries. The girl stopped, her gaze fixed on a massive circular door at the end of the hall. Frost clung to its surface, and thick cables fed into its frame. She turned to him, her voice quiet but sharp. His translator caught only one word this time, a word that made his stomach tighten run. Before he could ask why, the circular door began to open, and a shape far too large to be human began to move inside the darkness. The circular door groaned as it pulled apart, layers of ice cracking and falling to the floor in sharp, glassy shards. A pale blue mist spilled from the gap, curling low across the ground. Daniel's breath caught as the shadow inside shifted, slow and deliberate, like something waking after a very long sleep. The alien girl's hand tightened on his arm, her eyes locked on the darkness ahead. Whatever was in there wasn't a surprise to her. It was something she had expected, maybe even feared. Her voice came out low and urgent, the translator struggling to keep up. The words fractured, but clear enough. Not enemy, not friend, dangerous. A shape emerged, metal and flesh twisted together. Its body plated in ancient armor that seemed grown rather than built. Its movements heavy, each step making the floor vibrate. Its head turned toward them with a slow, grinding motion, eyes glowing a deep amber. Not like the drone's cold light, but something alive. Daniel's instincts told him this thing wasn't here to help. The girl took a step back, pulling him with her. But the creature's gaze locked on her and didn't waver. A deep, resonating sound rumbled from its chest, like a voice speaking from the bottom of the ocean. The girl answered in her own language, her tone sharp, commanding, but the creature kept advancing. Daniel glanced behind them. The stairwell seemed impossibly far away now, shadows filling it like a wall. The hum of the station's old systems was louder here, a strange rhythmic pulse, almost like a heartbeat. The thing's pace quickened, its clawed feet scraping sparks on the metal floor. Daniel grabbed a loose pipe from the wall, his fingers tightening around it, even though he knew it would be useless against something this big. The girl looked at him and shook her head quickly, pointing to the walls instead. He didn't understand at first. Then he saw it, the faint glowing patterns etched into the metal, the same kind they had passed in the stairwell. They pulsed brighter as the creature neared. Daniel reached out and pressed his palm against one of the symbols. Heat flared under his glove, not burning, but sharp enough to make him pull back. The floor beneath them shifted with a loud metallic click, section dropping slightly before sliding open. The girl didn't hesitate. She pulled him into the opening, the ground vanishing under their feet as they slid down a narrow chute. Cold air rushing past their faces, they landed hard in another chamber. The air thick with the scent of ozone and something older. Something that clung to the back of Daniel's throat. The lights here were brighter, golden, casting long shadows over. Walls lined with strange devices. Tall and thin, each humming softly. The girl's posture changed, the fear in her shoulders easing slightly. She moved toward one of the devices and pressed her hand against it. The humming deepened, the patterns along the walls flaring to life. Daniel's visor flickered with alerts, radiation spikes, unknown energy, language, data streaming. He turned at the sound of metal striking metal. The chute they had come through was sealing shut. But not before a clawed hand scraped through, the creature from above forcing its way down. Daniel felt his pulse spike. He looked at the girl, ready to run again. But she shook her head. Her voice was calmer now, almost steady. She spoke slowly and clearly. And the translator pieced together the meaning. Protector. Guardian, test. Daniel blinked, the words making no sense. She was saying the thing wasn't truly hunting them. It was testing. The creature dropped into the chamber with a heavy thud. The golden light painting its armor in sharp edges. It didn't attack, not yet. It stood there, watching them both, its amber eyes flicking between Daniel and the girl. She stepped forward, her hands raised, speaking in a tone that carried authority. Daniel could only watch, unsure if she was negotiating or commanding. The creature's gaze lingered on him for a long moment. Then it let out a sound that vibrated through his chest, a low, final note, slowly. It stepped aside, moving to stand against the far wall like some kind of sentinel. Daniel exhaled, his shoulders loosening slightly. The girl turned back to him, her expression unreadable. She said a single word the translator caught without error. Come. She led him to a circular console in the center of the room, its surface alive with streams of alien symbols. As her fingers danced over them, a holographic image flared to life above the console. The station appeared in miniature, and around it, dozens of ships. Daniel's breath tightened. They weren't just any ships. They were moving into position, encircling the station like predators closing in. His visor marked them with red indicators. Hostile. The girl looked at him, her voice steady, but her eyes carrying a weight he didn't understand yet. The translator shaped her words slowly, carefully. They have found me. They will not stop. You freed me. Now they will hunt you too. A deep vibration ran through the floor as something heavy locked onto the station from the outside. Daniel could hear the distant clang of docking clamps again. This time far more than one ship. The girl's fingers moved faster over the console. Lights along the walls flickering in response. From the far side of the room, another door began to open. This one leading into a tunnel bathed in soft white light. She glanced toward it, then back at him. Her voice softer now, but still carrying urgency. We leave. Now, Daniel's gut twisted, because he knew that whatever waited beyond that door was going to be as dangerous as whatever was coming through the station. But he also knew there was no turning back. Asterisk, the white light from the tunnel washed over Daniel's visor, making it hard to see what lay beyond. The girl stepped into it without hesitation, her bare feet silent against the smooth floor. He followed, glancing back only once to see the armored guardian still standing motionless by the console, its glowing eyes fixed on them as if memorizing their faces. The tunnel curved sharply, the hum of the station's machinery fading behind them, replaced by a softer, deeper sound, a slow pulse that felt less like noise and more like something alive. The walls here weren't made of the same cold metal as the rest of the station. They seemed grown, like bone or coral, with faint veins of light running under the surface. Daniel kept his steps light, every sense telling him this part of the station wasn't meant for just anyone. The girl walked ahead with certainty, her silver-marked skin glowing faintly in the pale light. Every few steps she would glance back, not to check if he was following, but to make sure he was still able to. As if she expected the place itself to weigh on him, they came to a small chamber, round and empty except for a raised platform in the center. Above it floated a sphere of shimmering blue energy, twisting and folding like liquid held in midair. Daniel stopped at the edge, the hair on his arms rising under his suit. It wasn't just light, it was giving off heat, cold, and a strange sense of being watched all at once. The girl stepped onto the platform, her hand reaching to warn the sphere. Daniel started to warn her, but before he could speak, her fingers touched the surface and sank into it like water. Ripples spread across the sphere, and the veins of light in the walls flared brighter. His visor exploded with data, energy readings spiking beyond safe levels, radiation warnings flickering, language fragments scrolling. The girl's voice cut through it all, clear now. The translator giving her words with almost no delay. This is the heart. The memory of the station, images flashed in the air around them, not like the holograms he had seen before. These were sharper, more alive, scenes of vast alien cities under twin suns. Fleets of ships moving in perfect formation, a palace of white stone that seemed to breathe with light, and then fire. Shadows, a sky ripped apart by war. Daniel's stomach tightened as the images changed to rows of cryopods, thousands of them, each holding someone with the same silver markings as the girl. A voice spoke over the vision, deep and steady, his translator catching only fragments. Preservation, betrayal, chosen. Last, the vision ended with a single pod still lit, while the others went dark. The one pod he had opened. The girl withdrew her hand. The sphere calming again. She looked at him with a strange mix of relief and sadness. She didn't need to say it. He understood. She had been alone in that frozen prison for far longer than he could truly imagine, and now she was the only one left. A tremor ran through the floor, dust falling from the chamber ceiling. Daniel's visor picked up impacts on the station hull, multiple breaches. The ships outside weren't waiting anymore. The girl stepped down from the platform, her pace quickening, toward another tunnel that opened on the far side of the chamber. They ran, the sound of distant explosions growing louder, the air shaking with the force of weapons hitting the outer decks. Daniel's thoughts raced. Whoever was after her had known exactly where to find her, and now they were tearing the station apart to get to her. The tunnel ended in a tall archway, leading to a narrow catwalk suspended over a massive vertical shaft. Far below, he could see the station's reactor core glowing with a dull red light. Coils of steam rising into the air, the catwalk swayed under their weight as they crossed. Halfway across, a sharp metallic shriek tore through the air. Daniel turned just in time to see a swarm of small, insect-like drones pouring from an opening in the wall above, their wings beating in a blur. They carried no guns. Instead, their front limbs ended in cruel, hooked claws. The girl moved faster, her voice sharp, urging him to keep going. Daniel swung his arm and batted away the first drone that came too close, its body shattering against the railing. But more were coming. He grabbed one as it lunged and slammed it down, sparks scattering into the void below. By the time they reached the other side, two more had gotten close enough to rake his suit, alarms flashing red inside his visor. The girl spun suddenly, her hand slicing through the air. And for a moment the drones froze, their wings faltering as if caught in an invisible grip. Then they dropped like stones into the reactor shaft. Daniel stared, his chest heaving. She didn't explain. She just grabbed his wrist and pulled him toward another doorway. Beyond it was a hangar, or what was left of one. The roof was partially collapsed, a jagged tear exposing the black expanse of space above. Two small shuttles sat on the deck, both covered in dust but intact. The girl ran to the nearest one and began working the control panel beside its hatch. Daniel scanned the shadows, every nerve alert for movement. A sound like tearing metal came from the far side of the hangar, and figures stepped through the gap, tall, armored, their weapons gleaming. They didn't hesitate. They started toward the shuttle with slow, deliberate steps. Daniel moved to stand between the girl and them, his hand finding the heavy tool clipped to his belt. Whatever happened next, he knew this. They weren't getting her without going through him first. The hangar felt heavier with every step the armored figures took, their boots ringing against the metal floor like slow, deliberate drums. Daniel kept his stance low, the heavy tool gripped tight in his hands, his pulse loud in his ears. The girl worked at the shuttle's control panel without looking up, her fingers moving fast, but not fast enough. The leader of the approaching group tilted its helmet slightly, the visor reflecting the dull hangar light. A voice came through, a built-in speaker, sharp and layered with distortion. The translator caught fragments. Return the air. Unharmed. Human leave. Daniel didn't move, his weight shifting slightly forward. One of the hunters stepped ahead, a long blade unfolding from its arm with a hiss. The movement was casual, confident, like someone who had done this 100 times. Daniel's fingers tightened on the tool. It wasn't made for fighting, but it was heavy, solid. And if he could get close enough, it might be enough to break armor. The girl suddenly shouted something in her language, the sound sharp enough to cut the air. The hunters paused mid-step, their heads turning toward her. Whatever she had said, it hadn't been a plea, it had been a challenge. Daniel didn't understand, but the way their leader's posture shifted told him they did. The pause lasted only a moment before the first hunter lunged forward. Daniel sidestepped and swung, the tool hard. The impact rang out. The hunter staggered but didn't fall, its armor dented but intact. Daniel barely had time to recover before another came in from the side, claws swiping toward his ribs. He ducked under it and shoved the attacker back toward the shuttle wall. The girl left the panel and stepped into the open, her eyes glowing, brighter than before, her hands lifting, thin lines of silver light flowing across her arms. The hunters froze mid-step again, their movements slowing as if thick air had wrapped around them. Daniel stared, the sight both strange and terrifying. She didn't hold them long, the light flickering as if draining her strength. Daniel knew they wouldn't get another pause. Get in, she shouted, her voice clear enough for him to understand, even without the translator. They moved fast, the shuttle's hatch sliding open with a hiss. Daniel climbed inside first, reaching back to pull her in. But before she could cross the threshold, the leader of the hunters grabbed her wrist, the motion so fast Daniel almost missed it. She cried out, her other hand sparking with silver light as she tried to break free. Daniel lunged forward, swinging the tool down on the leader's arm. The impact shuddered through him. The grip broke, and he yanked her inside, slamming the hatch shut as the hunters closed in. The sound of their weapons hitting the hull echoed. Like heavy hail, the girl stumbled into the pilot's seat, fingers dancing over controls that lit up with soft blue light. The shuttle's engines rumbled weakly at first, then built to a steady hum. Daniel strapped into the seat beside her, watching the hunters outside spread out, some moving toward the damaged roof. The shuttle lifted off the deck, its thrusters sending dust and debris swirling across the hangar floor. The hunters didn't back away. They leaped, claws catching the edges of the shuttle's frame. One slammed its blade into the side, sparks spraying against the viewport. Daniel unbuckled and grabbed the emergency release lever near the side hatch. Pulling it hard, the sudden blast of pressure ripped the hunter's grip loose, sending it spinning into the darkness of the hangar. The others tried to climb up the rear, but the girl banked the shuttle sharply, scraping them against the hangar wall before blasting out into open space. The black void swallowed them instantly. Stars distant and cold, the station shrinking behind them. But the scanners lit up red, multiple ships breaking formation and giving chase. Daniel's jaw tightened. "They're not letting us go," he muttered. The girl glanced at him, her expression calm but her eyes sharp. Her hands moved quickly over the controls, rerouting power. The shuttle's engines roared. The stars streaked as they accelerated, but the pursuing ships were faster. Closing the gap, Daniel saw weapons charging on their forward edges. The girl spoke again, and the translator caught most of it. "Hold on." A panel above them opened, revealing a device Daniel hadn't noticed before. It hummed with a strange pitch, the air in the cabin prickling against his skin. Then, a bright pulse of light exploded outward. The pursuing ships swerved, their scanners disrupted. Weapons flickering offline for a moment. It wasn't much time, but it was enough to give the shuttle some distance. Daniel's heart pounded. The girl's breathing was heavier now. Whatever she had used had cost her. "Where are we going?" he asked. She didn't answer right away, her gaze fixed ahead on the dark space between stars. Finally, she said, "Safe." Maybe. The word maybe didn't give him much comfort. The warning alarms blared again. 2 of the enemy ships had recovered faster than expected and were back in pursuit. Faster than before. The girl looked at him, her expression unreadable, then turned to the navigation panel. Her fingers hovering over a flashing control marked in symbols Daniel couldn't translate. He didn't know what it was, but the way she hesitated told him it was risky. The pursuers were almost within firing range again. Daniel met her eyes and gave a short nod. Whatever it was better than waiting to be caught. She pressed the control, and the shuttle lurched violently. The stars outside twisting and bending, space itself seeming to ripple. Daniel felt his stomach drop, his vision blurring for a moment before snapping back into focus. They were somewhere else now, somewhere darker, quieter, with no ships on. The scanner, but the girl's shoulders stayed tense. She turned to him slowly, her voice low. "This place. Not empty." The darkness outside the shuttle didn't feel like normal space. It was thicker somehow. The stars fewer and dimmer, hanging far away as if they were watching from another world. Daniel stared through the viewport, his chest tight. The scanners showed no ships nearby, but the girl's tense shoulders told him they weren't alone. A faint vibration ran through the shuttle, too soft to be the engines. It was irregular, like something large shifting somewhere close. Daniel checked the exterior cameras, but the image was static-filled. The girl tapped a sequence on the console, trying to clear the feed, but the static only grew worse. She spoke quietly, her voice almost a whisper. The translator gave him fragments, old, dangerous. Silent for long, her eyes flicked toward him, sharp and serious. "We move fast." The shuttle engines hummed louder, pushing them forward through the strange, dark space. Shapes began to appear in the black, faint at first, then clearer. As they drew closer, massive structures drifting without any visible support. Some looked like broken pieces of ships, others like colossal bones. The size of small cities, twisted and floating in silence. Daniel's gut twisted. He'd seen ship graveyards before, but nothing like this. There was no debris field, no drifting scrap, just whole pieces of things that looked dead yet untouched, as if whatever had killed them had done so cleanly and without a fight. One of the shapes moved, slowly turning toward the shuttle. Daniel blinked, unsure if he had imagined it, but then another shifted, and another. Their movements too smooth for drifting wreckage. The girl adjusted their course sharply, steering between 2 jagged structures. The shuttle lights caught the surface of one of them, and Daniel's stomach dropped. It wasn't metal. It was some kind of shell, like the carapace of an insect, only hundreds of meters long. Its surface marked with deep grooves and scars that glowed faintly from within. The vibration came again. Stronger now, rattling the panels, Daniel gripped the edge of his seat. The girl's hands moved faster over the controls. Her breathing steady but shallow. She didn't look at him. Didn't need to. Her focus was locked on something he couldn't yet see. A sudden flash lit up the darkness ahead, not from them, but from somewhere far in the shadows for a moment. Daniel thought it was a star until it blinked and moved. The outline of something vast emerged, larger than any ship he had ever seen, its surface rippling as if alive. The shuttle shuddered as a low-frequency sound rolled through the void, so deep Daniel felt it in his bones more than heard it. The girl spoke quickly, her tone sharp. The translator gave him enough to understand. Do not answer. Do not light. Do not speak. He swallowed hard and nodded. They passed under a massive arch of twisted material. Daniel glanced up through the overhead viewport and froze. The arch was a limb, a part of the giant creature above them, its edges. Drifting slowly in the weightless dark, it didn't move toward them. But the sense of being noticed was unbearable. The girl powered down the shuttle's exterior lights, plunging them into near darkness. Only the soft glow from the controls illuminated their faces. She shifted their course toward what looked like a narrow gap between two broken structures, her voice low, safe side. Not far. As they slipped through the gap, a shadow moved in the distance. One of the smaller shell-covered forms turned toward them, its grooves pulsing with light. Daniel's hand moved toward the throttle. But the girl's fingers stopped him. Fast is loud, she whispered. The smaller shape drifted closer, its movements too deliberate for something dead. As it neared, Daniel saw its surface split open slightly, revealing rows of dark, unblinking eyes, each one reflecting the faint light from the shuttle. Daniel's breath caught. The girl eased the shuttle forward, slow and silent. The creature followed for several long seconds before turning away, disappearing into the dark like a shadow sinking into deeper water. The strange structures began to thin out, and ahead Daniel saw a faint glow, not bright like a star, but steady. The girl angled toward it, the scanner struggling to read what it was. As they drew closer, the glow resolved into a small station, if it could even be called that, half buried into a jagged rock. Its lights dim and flickering. She slowed the shuttle, approaching cautiously. The station looked ancient, its exterior covered in pitted marks and scorched scars, the docking ring barely large enough for them to fit. Daniel scanned for life signs, but the display came up empty. They docked in silence, the hatch opening to a stale, cold air that smelled faintly metallic. The girl stepped out first, her bare feet making no sound on the deck. Daniel followed, every sense on edge. The place felt abandoned. Yet the faint hum under the floor told him something still worked here. They moved through narrow corridors lit by sickly yellow lights, the walls lined with strange symbols scratched deep into the metal. Daniel brushed his fingers over one of them. It was rough, uneven, carved by hand. The girl glanced back and shook her head quickly, motioning for him not to touch. They reached a wide, circular room with a single console in the center. Covered in dust, the girl approached it slowly, her hand hovering above the surface before pressing down. The console flickered to life, old data streams spilling across its cracked screen. Her eyes scanned the lines quickly, and she spoke softly, the translator giving him the words in a voice barely above a breath. Maps. Hidden paths. Places they cannot follow. Daniel's shoulders eased slightly. But before relief could take hold, a deep, distant thud echoed through the station. The girl froze, her head tilting toward the sound. It came again, closer, this time metal groaning somewhere in the outer hull. Daniel's stomach sank. Whatever had been moving out there in the dark had just found them. The sound came again, a deep metallic thud that made the dust on the console tremble. Daniel's gaze swept the walls, looking for any sign of a door or another way out. The girl's fingers moved quickly over the cracked screen, pulling up. Maps of the station, lines of alien script flickering too fast for him to read. She stopped suddenly and looked at him, her voice low but certain. "We have to move now." They left the console. The circular room's single exit feeling far too small for what they needed. Daniel's boots echoed softly on the metal floor as they stepped back into the narrow corridor. The air was different now, heavier, pressing down on them, the faint hum in the floorboards had deepened into a slow, steady pulse halfway down the hall. The lights flickered and died, leaving only the faint glow from the girl's silver markings to guide them. Daniel's visor switched to low-light vision, the outlines of the corridor sharpening into eerie shadows. He heard a faint scraping from behind them, something long and slow, like claws dragging along the wall. The girl didn't turn. She kept walking, her pace quickening. Daniel matched her speed. The scrape grew louder. Closer, and then something else joined it, a soft, rhythmic clicking, almost like breathing, but mechanical. They rounded a corner and came to a set of stairs leading down. The girl didn't hesitate. They descended into a lower section of the station. The air colder here, condensation dripping from the ceiling. The walls were rougher, less like a space station and more like a cave, as if the structure had been built around the rock or perhaps carved into it. Daniel's visor pinged with a faint energy reading ahead. The girl glanced back, her eyes sharper now. Safe room. Maybe, the maybe again. It didn't comfort him, but he followed. The sound behind them hadn't stopped. They entered a wide chamber. The floor covered in shallow water that rippled around their boots. In the center stood a tall, narrow device. Like a vertical ring, faint blue light swirling inside its frame. Daniel had seen jump gates before, but nothing like this. It felt older, more alive, the light inside moving like it had a mind of its own. The girl stepped toward it, her hand hovering over a control node at its base. She looked at him once, and in that brief glance, he knew she wasn't sure what would happen next. "This leads far." "Far away," she said, her voice steady, but only one jump. Before Daniel could respond, the scraping and clicking behind them grew louder. And in the faint glow from the ring, he saw it, a long, segmented shape sliding into the room. Its body half hidden in the shadows, rows of dim, lidless eyes catching the blue light. Its movements smooth but too precise to be mindless. It stopped at the edge of the water, its head tilting as if studying them. Daniel tightened his grip on the heavy tool he still carried. The girl's hand dropped to the control, her markings glowing brighter. The ring's blue light flared in response. The creature moved suddenly, faster than Daniel expected for something so large. He stepped between it and the girl, swinging the tool hard. The impact rang through the chamber. The creature recoiled but didn't retreat, its tail smashing into the water. Sending a wave across the room, the girl shouted something, her voice carrying a command that made the creature hesitate for the briefest moment. In that instant, she slammed her hand onto the control node. The blue light in the ring flared blindingly bright. Filling the chamber with a sharp hum, the creature lunged again. Daniel felt the rush of air as its clawed limbs swung toward him. But before it could strike, the light pulled him forward. The sensation like being dragged through cold water, sound, stretching and distorting until it was almost unbearable. Then it was gone. The chamber, the creature, the girl, everything. Daniel landed hard on solid ground. The air here warmer, tinged with the scent of plants and rain. His visor adjusted quickly, showing him a vast jungle under a pale sky. Massive trees stretching into the mist. He spun around, heart pounding. The ring was there, smaller now, its light flickering, and the girl stood in front of it, breathing heavily, her skin dimming as the glow faded. Behind her, the blue light twisted once more, and for a split second, Daniel saw the shadow of the creature forcing its way through. The girl met his eyes, her voice quiet but firm. We have little time. The ring gave a final pulse before going dark, leaving only the distant sound of something moving in the jungle. Heavy and slow, Daniel stepped closer to her, his mind racing. They had escaped the station, but whatever hunted her, and now him, hadn't been left behind. The jungle shifted in the mist, shapes moving where no wind touched the leaves. Somewhere far off, a deep call echoed through the air. Not mechanical this time, but alive. The girl's hand brushed his arm, steadying him. "Welcome," she said softly, "to my world." The sound came again, closer now, and Daniel knew this was only the beginning.